Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the first round of the Global Chess League being held here in London. Now, many strong players are playing in this event, including the 5-time world champions Magnus, Carlsen, Vishy, Anand, yours truly, Arjun Erigaisi, and many other top players. So the event is a little bit unique. It is, of course, a team format. You have a team of 6 players playing, and if you win games with black, you get 4 points. If you win games with white, you get 3 points. So a very interesting and different format. On top of that, the time control is 20 minutes with no second increment, meaning that flagging is in play. All right, so first game we're going to take a look at, of course, is the iconic matchup, Vishy versus Magnus. They have played in the World Championship before. Vishy is a little bit past his prime now. He's something like 53 or 54 years old, but very, very formidable, and let's see how the game goes. Vishy with the white pieces, and he opens with the move e4. Magnus plays the Sicilian. Magnus probably wants to play something a little bit more double-edged and sharp here versus playing e5, after which the game could trend towards a draw very quickly. So we get c5. Vishy plays knight f3, we get knight c6 from Magnus, and now we have the move bishop b5 here. Vishy could have, of course, played d4 and the open Sicilian, but instead he goes for the Ross-Lemo variation with bishop b5. Magnus goes e6, we get castles, knight e7, and now Vishy plays move rook e1. Now, you will notice Vishy is moving pretty quickly, and this is sort of a testament to how much chess Vishy has studied over the years, that even when I'm sure he's a little bit surprised by Magnus's opening choice, he still knows what to do. So we get a6. Vishy takes the knight, we get takes, and now we have the move d4, and I really like this opening setup from Vishy, mainly because his play is very simple. He's just trying to finish his development, bring the knight, and bring the bishop out. So we get takes, Magnus goes d6, we get the move knight c3, and here we have the move bishop d7. Now Vishy trades the knights on c6, and he plays this move knight to d5, which is a phenomenal move. It is a double exclam move, and the best move in the position. Now the reason this move is so strong is what black would love to do is get bishop e7 in, followed by castles, let's just say rook d1, queen c7, h3, rook f d8. And in this position, black has the 2 Bs on e7 and c6, the 2 rooks on the semi-open c file, queen stack as well, and black should be a little bit better. But when Vishy plays move knight to d5, now black can go bishop e7 like in the game, but when you play bishop e7, after takes, suddenly both sides only have 1 B on the board, and black no longer has the bishop pair. Now, if Magnus were to play with like pawn takes knight, white takes here, creating the fossil, you check the king, and then you take the bishop on the next turn, and after bishop e7, takes, white is simply much better after a move like bishop g5, or maybe even queen to f3 as well. So Magnus goes bishop e7, regrettable decision, but after takes, and b3, now we're in a situation where if anybody is better, it should be white, primarily because white can put the bishop on this long diagonal to target the pawn on d6, and black's bishop doesn't really attack the pawn on e4. So Magnus castles, we get bishop a3, rook f d8, and now we have the move queen d3 being played. Computer prefers queen d4 a little bit more, I think because you can go bishop b2 to line up the double A battery towards the pawn on g7. Apologies for the bad arrows, of course, but I am on my travel setup. So we get queen d3, rook d7, c4 is played, rook a d8, rook a d1, and now we're steadily in the middle game here. Both sides have finished their development. White has the rooks on the e and the d file here. You have the bishop on a3. Black is maybe marginally worse here, but honestly, it is pretty close to being equal. So we get queen g5. Vishy plays queen g3, and this move is an acknowledgement that Vishy is happy to make a draw with the white pieces against Magnus and leave it up to his teammates to try and win the match. So we get the trade. Magnus goes f6, we get f3 here, guarding the pawn, and also bringing the white king to the center of the board. We get h5, king f2, king f7, and now Vishy plays the move bishop b4. Here Magnus plays e5, trying to bring the king to e6 to guard the pawn on d6, but also prepare to play for f5 as well. We got bishop a5 from Vishy, Magnus goes rook b8, and now we have the move rook to h1 being played. Now after rook to h1 is played in this position, we get the move g6, guarding the pawn, and Vishy plays move g4. Now one thing I really like about Vishy's play at this point in the game is he is moving relatively quickly. Remember, there is no increment, so if you get low on time, you are going to get cheesed. So we get g4. Magnus takes, we get check, king e6, takes, and now we have the move bishop b4 being played. And at this point, Vishy is looking like he will be able to draw this game at the very least, as even though he's temporarily down a pawn, he's going to win this pawn on d6, and he should be fine. So we get king e6, takes, king f7, and now Vishy plays move bishop a5, which is perhaps very slightly wrong. F takes g4 is a little bit better, because after bishop takes pawn here, white can go check. If you go e6, you simply make the draw. Actually, I guess king e6 is rook e7, mate. What am I thinking? And after king g8, at the very very least, you can play rook d6, forcing a draw, or g5, and after takes, and rook to e7 here. If anybody is better, it should be white because you win the pawn on e5, and black will have the double g pawns on g6 and g5. Instead, we get bishop a5, Magnus plays king e7, we get one of the repetitions, and now we get takes, and rook to h8. Now, very nice finesse by Magnus. Remember, there is no increment, so when Magnus blitzes out king e7, he's trying to burn a couple extra seconds off the clock so that maybe Vishy will get too low and blunder. So we get takes, rook h8. Now Vishy plays bishop d8. We got to move f5, rook f6, king g7, and we have to move rook d6 back. Now Vishy at this point is very desperate to try and force a draw immediately. He's offering multiple repetitions, but Magnus decides to play on here with this move, king to f7. Or sorry, I should say Vishy decides to take on f5. He could have, of course, checked and probably made the repetition, but instead he takes on f5. We get pawn takes, rook f6, king g7, and now we get rook d6 back. A little bit puzzling as to why Vishy took on f5 versus repeating, but at any rate, this is the case. We get rook to h2, king to g3, rook to e2. Important move because if black were to take on a2, after check, king f7 takes, rook a3. White has many ways to draw, but probably simplest is a check, take, and then after rook b3 here, white can simply play something like bishop to d4. Black is struggling to push the p on the queen side, and due to the opposite colored bishops, this should be a draw. So Magnus goes rook e2, Vishy plays bishop g5, and now we get this move e4 being played. Now Magnus could have tried to keep the game going with king to g8 here. And the reason this move is very tricky is that if black takes, there's always bishop f6 to win the pawn on e5. If you go to f7, there's always rook f6. But if you go to g8, now you take away the bishop f6 threat while still attacking the pawn on a2. And just to give you a sample line, like bishop h4 takes, for example, there's no rook f6 to win the pawn on f5. There's no bishop to f6 either to win the pawn on e5 as the king is on g8. So this would have been a little bit slippery. Now, Magnus probably at this point was happy to draw the game. He didn't think he had a whole lot. So he goes e4, we get takes, rook d2, an important move here to try and stop black from playing rook g2. And after takes, and bishop b1, black is going to win one of these queenside pawns, but due to the opposite color b's, this should be a draw. So Vishy goes c5, we get bishop takes a2, b4, now we have king f6, king f4, bishop b1, and after bishop to e1, the players agree to a draw here. A sample line would be king to e6, bishop h4, king to d5, bishop d8, king c4, and now after bishop a5, the pawns and the bishop all hold each other together here. You simply will do the yo-yo with king f4 and king e5, or king g3, king f4, and black cannot ever break this pawn structure on the queen side, so the game ends peacefully in a draw. So for Vishy, this is a great result, a draw with the white piece in the first game against Magnus. He was never in trouble in this game, and this really speaks to just how strong Vishy is, even if he is somewhat semi-retired. The fact that he can still prepare, play great chess is just a testament to the fact that he is one of the greatest players of all time. I would personally put him in my top 5 for anybody who's wondering, but it's just an incredible show at his age. So, Vishy draws in the first game. Now, the match is currently tied 2-2. I'm not sure how it's going to end, but it should be a very exciting finish. All right, so that's the first game. So the next game we're gonna look at is the game featuring myself against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Now, those of you guys who are watching this video, you can probably tell that I'm wearing a shirt here for the team that I'm competing, which of course is the American Gambits. So, playing for the American Gambits, we're playing the, I believe, Upstart Moombas, or Upstart Ganges. I forget exactly what the team name is. And I'm playing on the board 1 on the icon board against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Now, Maxime and I have played a lot over the years, but it's been a while since we've had many competitive games, simply due to the pandemic and everything that has transpired since then. So it's always nice playing against a familiar face. All right, so back to the game. I have the white pieces, as does the rest of my team, and now I play the move e4. Maxime plays his classic Sicilian, knight f3, d6, and here I play the move bishop b5. Now, of course, I could have played d4 and gone into Maxime's patented Najdorf system, or I should say patented, not patented, sorry, now I sound like XQC, but instead I decide I want to play a little bit more slowly. So I go check. We get bishop d7, and now I play the move c4, guarding the bishop on b5, and Maxime plays the move knight c6. Now I go knight c3, we get e5 here, and I play the move a3. Now, the main reason that Maxime plays e5 here is if he were to play e6, after takes, d4, takes, similar to the Vishy game against Magnus, I'm getting the classic Maroczy bind structure here with the 2 pawns on c4 and e4, which try to stop black from playing the d5 pawn break. So Maxime goes e5 to stop me from building the big white center. I go a3, knight g7, and now I play the move d3. Now at this point, you'll notice we have symmetrical pawns in the center of the board. It's a very clogged position here in the middle. Not a whole lot of play, but this is why Maxime puts the knight on g6 here. He's trying to argue that the knight on g6 is better than my knight on f3. Black obviously could have put the knight on f6 here, but the knight is simply staring at the pawn on e4. So we get this position. He's trying to argue the knight has better squares, whereas my knight on f3 has no squares in the middle of the board. So I go h4 here, trying to harass the knight on the rim, and now he plays h5, and I play the move knight to d5. Maxime goes bishop e7, and now I play the move g3, trying to guard this pawn on h4 from being captured. Game continues with a6, I go bishop a4, and now Maxime plays the move rook b8, intending to play b5 and expand on the queen side. Here I go b4, we get b5, and now I play the move bishop b3. And at this point, it's time to really take stock of the position. The opening is pretty much complete here. I'm about to finish my development, as is Maxime. So next 2 or 3 moves, a lot should happen, especially with the chaos on the b and the c files here, and we'll see who's better at the end of the day. So Maxime takes, I take back, takes, I take. I have to give up this bastion in the center of the board. I don't really want to, but such is life. So I take, and here I play the move knight to g5. Now, remember, this is a game without increment, so it's not a situation where I can spend a lot of time on every move. So I'm still trying to play very quickly, and when I play knight g5, I think that I might even be better here as I'm pressing the pawn on f7. You also will notice my pawns on the king side all guard each other. So say black were to castle, now I can take the pawn on h5, and after takes, suddenly I'm crashing through on the h file and I win the game. So my argument here is that because the pawn on h4 is guarded, the knight on g6 is misplaced as the pawn on h5 is always under attack. So Maxime trades. He goes queen b8, and now I castle, and we get the move bishop g4. Now here I built a 4-minute time advantage, and I spend about a minute before playing f3, which I think is okay, but the computer actually would prefer queen to c2, and after castles, rook takes a6. White should be better here. I actually was a little bit worried that at some point there might be a bishop f3, followed by some kind of weird queen c8, queen h3 with a lolly checkmate. Now this bishop is a blunder because of bishop f7, but just in general, this bishop around the king and no fianchettoed bishop on this diagonal, it feels a little bit scary. So I go f3 instead. Maxime plays bishop e6, and now I spend 3 minutes. I spend my entire advantage on the clock before playing this bishop d2 move. Now, I did not want to play this move. I wanted to play bishop takes e6 here, but after queen b6 check, king h1, fe6, and f4, takes, and a move like rook to b3. I was simply unsure whether I'm better, not rook b3, sorry, rook b2 is what I meant. I was unsure whether I'm actually better here or whether I'm worse. I'm down a pawn temporarily. Maybe here there's queen to a4, so black should go rook b5 instead, but I couldn't judge it, and the problem is in such situations where there's no increment, you don't have all the time in the world to think. If you get too low, you're going to get flagged, so you have to make a lot of decisions. You have to like cut yourself off at a certain moment versus a classical game of chess or even rapid where there is increment. So I ended up going bishop d2. Now I knew full well that when I played this move, Maxime would sack the rook with rook takes, bishop takes, and rook f2 castles. Now the thing about this situation is that in a classical game, I think I would be much better here. In fact, I think there's a very good chance I would win. But one thing you have to realize when you're playing either with increment, like 2 seconds, or no increment, a lot of positions and the pure evaluation can change quite a bit based on the time. And I think that ultimately this was a big mistake by me to go into this because now it's getting complicated. And in complications, I'm going to have to find the best moves without burning too much time. And for Maxime, his moves are going to be reactions to whatever I do. So I go bishop e3 now. The computer prefers rook b1 here, and I think after queen to a7, it wants us to move bishop to a5, and apparently I should be better here after queen d7, and then maybe rook d2, but there's still queen h3, there's still d5 similar to the game, and it's getting very, very messy. So I go bishop e3, we get rook d8, rook d2, and now Maxime decides to sack a pawn with this move pawn to d5. I take, and now he goes e4. Now the problem with the situation is that it's very, very unclear what's going on. Black has obvious moves. So for example, if I take out the pawn, I lose the bishop and I lose the game due to the classic 90-degree right triangle. But let's just say after e4, I play king h2. Now black might even have knight to e5, hitting the pawn, or takes, and then something like knight e5, queen h5, and rook takes d5, and suddenly there's a check on b2. There are all these weak light squares around my king, and everything is starting to spin out of control. And again, with no increment, it's a very, very dangerous situation to be in. So I did consider playing this move f4 here, but after knight to e7, queen h5 takes, bishop d4 and e3, let's just say I go queen g4 and g6. Very, very hard to judge what is going on here. If I play a move like rook g2, there's e2 here. Black is pushing the pawn up the board. There's weaknesses in the center of the board, and there's also possibly a kebab with rook to d1 as well, and it's just very tough to play without much time on the clock. So at this point, I go for d6, trying to shut down the diagonal, and now we get the move pawn takes pawn, and here I play the move rook b1. Now, you'll also notice here I'm down nearly 3 minutes on the clock, so I'm trying to pick up my speed and go a little bit quicker. We get bishop b5, and here I play the move bishop f2. And this move, I think, frankly, is a mistake. I suspect that I should have just taken the pawn on f3, and after rook takes d6, takes, I should have played something like rook d1, and after queen e7 here, I can play something like bishop f4, not bishop f4, sorry, bishop d4 here, and I should be okay in this position. Simplified, black can't really use this diagonal checkmate my white king. And just in general, there should be no risk. Now, keep this in mind, because when I go bishop f2, now after knight to e5, rook d5, and f6, I'm probably still okay here, but the knight is now guarded by the pawn. The knight guards the pawn at f3. There are all kinds of lollies which exist with queen c8 and queen h3, and I don't have a simple way to force a draw. And in a team event especially, it's very important that you don't lose games. Like, you have to know when to bail out versus an individual event where you can take such chances. So I go rook c1, Maxime plays bishop e2, I play queen c2, and now we get the move queen b7, and here I play this move rook c5, which is also a mistake. Now, my initial intention was to go queen c7, but after takes king h7, I think I saw queen to e8, and I was very worried about something like knight g4, I guess I have d7, which is winning, so this might still be a little bit better for white, but after king h6, check, and g5, it's very, very messy, takes, really hard to judge what's happening after queen h8 and king g6, because now the queen covers g8, no checks anywhere, there's f2 incoming, and I still don't have any idea whether white is better or white is maybe even worse. So I go rook c5, and now Maxime plays move queen d7. And at this point, I realize that I have made a mistake, because now the lolly is in play, queen h3, queen g2. So say I play that move like queen b2. After queen h3, this is a classic Jean-Baptiste lolly checkmate with queen g2, and my king is stuck. So I go rook c8, Maxime takes, I play queen f5, we get bishop d3, I take, and now I go rook c8, takes, and king h7. Now at this point, I'm pretty happy, because even though I'm down about a minute on the clock, we are in an endgame, so I should be able to save it. So I go rook d6, Maxime plays bishop d3, and now I go bishop to a7, we get bishop to b5, and here I'm able to bring my king to stop the pawn. Now, I do believe that if black were able to get a position like this, just to illustrate it, with knight to g4, for example, I think that here black might be better, because my king is stuck on g1, I have no way to get it towards the center of the board, as the bishop and the knight cover some squares, and I think it could be dangerous. But luckily, I spot king f2 now. You also might have been watching a live video where I considered playing bishop b6, but after bishop b5, now if I go king f2 here, I actually lose the knight c4, which forks the rook and the bishop, because after rook e6, bishop d7, suddenly both the rook and the bishop are under attack. If I move the rook, he takes the bishop, knight guards the b, and now with the knight and a b for the rook, black is completely winning. So I go here, I get king f2 in, and now with the king being able to run towards the center of the board, I should never really be in danger of losing the game. So we got bishop e2, I play bishop d4. Keep in mind, I'm still down 1.5 minutes. Now with a 2-second increment or 3-second increment, I think I draw this for sure, but I still have to be precise, because I make even 1 or 2 wrong moves, I'm gonna have to burn clock. If I get below a minute or even 30 seconds, anything can happen. So we got knight g4, I go king e1, we got bishop b5, and now I play the move rook to d5, attacking the pawn on h5. Maxime goes king g6, and now I play the move rook c5. Now, one of the great things about this position is that here I have the wooden shield, my bishop covers some critical squares here, and I can start doing the classic yo-yo ma by moving the rook back and forth on the 5th rank, which means that Maxime has to use time to try and prove the advantage, whereas I just sit on the position, and I only have to use 1 or 2 seconds on every move. So we get knight h6, I go bishop e3, knight f5, king f2, and now Maxime plays bishop e2 trying to guard the pawn. This, however, is a mistake, as I can now play the move g4, attacking the knight on f5. If black were to take the pawn, I have h5, checking the king, no square available on g5, and after takes, let's just say king h4 and bishop f4, white is actually winning, as I have an extra rook on f5, and even though black has 5 pawns here, the king is probably getting checkmated. So Maxime takes, now I take, we get king h7, and after bishop d2, with the knight not having squares on either f5 or g6 here, I will be able to draw quite comfortably. Maxime plays bishop d3, I go king g3, knight f5, takes, knight h6, and now I play the move rook c7, we get bishop b5, rook a7, and here we decide to make a repetition here, and the game ends peacefully in a draw. Now Maxime could have played a move like bishop e8, but after bishop takes h6, takes, and king f4, with over a minute on the clock and a rook versus a bishop and 2 pawns, there is no chance that I would have been flagged. So Game ends in a draw here. Very, very tough game for me, but I do save the draw, and this means that my team is doing relatively well. Now, the next game we're going to look at, the final game, is being played on the second board between Jan-Krzysztof Duda and Vidit Gujrathi from India. Now, Vidit, a player who needs no introduction. He's someone that I lost to twice in the past candidates, but at least in this event, I won't have to face it. Now, from the other side, you have Jan-Krzysztof Duda from Poland. Very, very talented player. He's been close to 2750, 2760 on multiple occasions. He has not played a whole lot in recent years. I think he's had some health issues, if I'm not mistaken, but it is good to see him competing. So Duda has a white piece on board too, and the game starts out with the move e4. We got e5, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6, and now Duda plays the move bishop b5. Now, this, of course, is a classic 4 knights, but with bishop b5 instead of d4. Vidit goes knight d4, we get castles, c6, and now bishop d3 is played. Here, Vidit trades knights, and he plays the move d6 here, opening up the diagonal for the b, but also guarding the pawn on e5. Duda goes bishop e2, we get h5, and now we have the move d3. Now, h5 is a very enterprising approach. Black could obviously play g6 and bishop g7, bishop e7 as well, and it's very, very stable, but Vidit decides to go for glory and tries to win with h5. So we get d3. G6, bishop g5, bishop e7, and now we have the move rook a d1. Vidit plays bishop g4, we get queen to e3, and now we have this very enterprising move knight to d5. Now, in my opinion, Vidit here is trying to create chaos on the board. He's trying to win a game with the black pieces because a win with black is worth 4 points, whereas a win with white is worth 3. So he's trying to create some imbalance here very early. Now, this can go great or backfire. If you win with black, it's fantastic. If you lose, you feel like you've ruined the team's chances, and it's very difficult. So we get takes, bishop g5, Duda plays f4 here, you can't take Duda to the pin, and now we get the move bishop h6. Duda trades, and now we get the move d4 here, trying to attack this pawn on e5 in the center due to the pin. Now, Vidit goes queen b6, trying to pin the pawn. If you take with the f pawn, you do a Botez gambit and resign. If you take with the d pawn, also a Botez gambit, and you lose the queen. However, Duda here plays the move knight to a4, attacking the queen. Now you have to move the queen off the diagonal, and suddenly it's getting very tricky. Now we get the move queen to a5, and this is simply a slight mistake here. Probably queen to b4 would have been better. I'm not actually sure why, because I guess after takes, queen a4 takes. Actually, it's going to transpose the game, so I'm not going to comment on this, but there's something different. So we get queen a5, we get takes, queen a4, takes, and now we have the move pawn takes pawn. Now, Vidit here is up a bishop, so he is up a bishop, but he cannot castle a king, and white also has his passed pawn. White is trying to push p up the center of the board. So we get king to f8. Duda goes queen e7, we get king g7, and now we have the move queen e5, king g8, and here we get the move d7. Now, the computer actually says that after king to h7, black is much better. I'm sure the reason Vidit did not play this move is because of f5 here trying to crash through, but black, in very computer-esque fashion, can take the pawn here, because after actually not take, sorry, can take the pawn here, not a2 actually, because after a2, I think takes d7 is still winning, but you can take on c2, and now if white takes, you take with the queen, and you guard the pawn on f7 from being captured. Instead, we get king g8. Now Duda plays d7 here. The king and the two towers are disconnected here. White is threatening to push the pawn and get a queen, so now you have to go rook d8, stopping it. But Duda, however, plays the move f5, and at this point, as you can tell from the valuation bar, white is completely winning in this position. The king is stuck, f-file is opening up, rook is stuck behind the passed pawn, and even though you've got this extra b on h6, it is too little, too late. So Vidit goes g5 here. Now we get to move rook to d6, activating the tower on the 6th. You also have queen e8 or f6 here, and we get to move queen b4. Now, queen b4 simply leads to a situation where there is going to be a forced checkmate, but it's hard to fault Vidit. He's down 3 minutes on the clock, a very tough position to play. Bishop f8 is probably the best move, but after queen to e8 here, the bishop is pinned. You can't capture the rook, and now if you take, I get a new queen, and I simply have an extra rook for a bishop. And if you play me like king g7, I can simply go rook g6, which is going to be very similar to the game. So we got queen b4. Now we have the move queen to e8 check being played. Vidit goes bishop f8. And here we get the bone crusher rook to g6, sacking the rook and checking the king. Now at this point, black is simply checkmated. If you go king to h7, I take the pawn, I take the b, and you get mated. And after pawn takes rook, white has sacked the rook, but there's queen to e6, checking the king here. And now Vidit's king gets checkmated on the next turn. You can go to either square here. We get king h7, and after queen takes g6, Vidit gets checkmated by Duda in this game. So, what to say about this game other than it's simply a masterpiece from Duda. He shows how strong he can be when he gets to play attacking chess. Just an incredible game from start to finish. Really no major mistakes, I would say, from Duda. Computer might have said there was a queen c2 move that could have been good for black, but overall, it's really hard to fault either player. I think Vidit, under the time constraints, did pretty well, and Duda just overpowers masterfully with these great tactics at the end of the game. So, with this win, this means that my team, the American Gambits, we actually get a big match victory. We had 3 wins with the white pieces. Everybody plays with the same color, so we had 3 wins with the white pieces. We had 1 loss as well, meaning that with the draws and the 3 wins and 1 loss, we win our first match by a score of 11-6, and we start off red hot. So, my team, the American Gambits, gets a win in the first match. Tomorrow's a new day. We'll be playing 1 game a day, so I'll probably be doing one of these recaps like this. But at any rate, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the first round of the Global Chess League being held here in London. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with a recap after I play day 2 tomorrow, I believe against Anish Giri, if I'm not mistaken. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning if you are back across the pond, but that's going to be it for now, so hope you guys enjoy it and have a good rest of your day. See you guys. Bye.